From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Launch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, we're going to take a blast to the past. We are going back to Central Italy. It's the Renaissance. It's the 1600s. We've got a Renaissance man here. Mickie Kennedy, he is the founder of eReleases. Now, folks, if you're active in business, you've probably used his firm without even realizing it. His firm has sent out more than 150,000 press releases, and he's represented 40 of the Shark Tank companies in sending out those e-releases. If that isn't enough, the man was so bold 9 years ago where he fired himself. And now he's gotten into philanthropy. He's a poet. The man does it all. Mickie, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. We're really looking forward to talking to you. So you started eReleases about 25 years ago. What was the impetus to start eReleases?
So I had waited tables after getting my poetry degree. I got an MFA in creative writing. And my game plan was just to wait tables and write poetry and live a very bohemian life. And I did that for a summer after graduating, and I was miserable. My joints ached, my back ached, and I was just psychologically drained after a 10-hour stint at waiting tables. And I realized I needed to pivot, though we didn't call it that at the time, to a safe office job. And so I got hired at a telecom research startup as employee number 3. And because I had writing in my background, albeit creative, they like, hey, figure out press releases and send them to the media. Here's a Rolodex of fax numbers that the boss has. And he was a telecom attorney. And he had sent out releases, and he goes, not much is going to happen. And so I'd send them out. Not much did happen. But I just felt like this is a lost opportunity. When you spend a whole day programming a fax machine with 100 numbers, you got to want it to make it matter. And so I started looking at the articles, and I noticed something that was missing from our press releases, and that was a story. We were publishing data, and I was just like, here's data for, Central America. Here's data for the Caribbean. And there's no story there. And so I had already sent out a fax of the Caribbean data. But one thing I noticed was that one country, I can't recall what it was, had more telecom traffic to and from the United States than almost all the others combined. And when I researched it, it turned out that it was because it was a leading call center for 1-900 numbers, which were real popular in the 1990s. You could call for 50 cents a minute and, punch a number and have your horoscope read to you, or you could call and, speak to a live psychic for a couple dollars a minute. And there was also, get pet advice and romance and all these things. And so I wrote the press release, about the data, but I shared the story of that one country and why it was leading and put a great quote in there. And I sent that out, and the data was the same as it was the week before when I just sent the data tables out. And all of a sudden I got picked up in The Economist, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and 3 telecom trade publications. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. The phones rang, sales came in, and I just I wonder if I can replicate this. I continued to talk and pick out little stories behind the data that we had, and we continued to get picked up. I remember that, not just looking at the yearly data, but comparing it to prior years, I noticed a pattern where pre-industrialized countries would often have telecom traffic growth to the United States grow double digits 2 to 4 years before their economies grew at double digits. And so when I sent that one out, Barron's, Investors Business Daily picked that up. And all of a sudden we started getting orders and calls from a new customer base that we never had before. Investment firms, hedge funds, researchers. Before it was always telecom researchers. Now it was like financial researchers and analysts. And so it really made a huge difference in our business. And I just felt like this is something I figured out for this company. I would certainly love to help others. And at the same time, as I was faxing, started to get calls saying, hey, in the future, instead of faxing, could you email it to us? I was like, oh yeah, email's kind of cool. They're like, yeah, we just got email addresses here. And so I started building a media database. In my spare time, which wasn't considerable working for a startup, I would be on bulletin boards where a lot of journalists hung out. And I would ask if I could email them press releases for this future business that I'm doing. And all of them said, sure, because email was new and fresh and we weren't receiving 1,500 messages a day. So they loved that. And I continued to do that for a while until PR Newswire reached out to me and said, hey, we like what you're doing. We'd love to support you. And what they suggested was that we add a city or state distribution for a couple $100 to our service. And I really pushed and said, my customers deserve a national distribution. And I knew that at the time, they charged $1,600 for a 600-word press release. But surprisingly, they didn't run away. We continued to talk. And I think it was I who learned that they had an overnight editorial team. And they said that they're not very busy. They sit idle for hours and they're waiting for breaking news or a recall, or you need to get something to the Asian markets all of a sudden. They have to be there, but most of the time they're not doing anything. And I was like, hey, instead of sending all my releases out, immediately, I could start scheduling them for the next business day, and you could set them up overnight on the wire and it wouldn't cost you additional labor. And with that, they agreed. And all of our releases today go out nationally over PR Newswire. And rather than you spend $1,600, it's probably like a third of that price, especially with our new customer special. And it's a considerable savings and it's a great access to the wire. But that being said, you want to make sure that what you announce is meaningful and strategic, because the biggest mistake I see is so many releases are duplicates of what they see their competitors and other people in the marketplace doing. And the fact is 97% of press releases don't work. They don't get earned media.
Okay, so what's the best way to go about getting earned media from putting out the release?
Right. Focus on the 3% of press releases that do get picked up. I have created a free masterclass that focuses on that. If anybody's interested, it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. It's an hour-long video with some supporting information. It's a very small ask. Last course I bought, I found out it was 40 hours of stuff. I was like, I don't have that in me. So this is less than an hour. Anybody can walk through it. But it's basically the types of releases that get picked up again and again. And if you build a PR campaign, and if you're going to try PR, don't try with one release. You really need to commit to a PR campaign of 6 to 8 different strategic ideas. Not all of them are going to work, but if they're strategic, some of them will. And you learn from that and you move forward. One type of thing is, the product launch press release. Everyone does one, and it usually consists of, here's our product, here's a list of features, here's a page to learn more and buy. Well, already knowing that journalists like a story arc, there's no story there. So one of the immediate things that you could do is, number one, put a data point that shows the meaningfulness of your product. If you've got, like, say, a logistics software solution that solves, unpredictable costs, like fuel and other stuff, and makes it predictable, you can talk about, hey, 67% of new transportation companies fell in the first 5 years. And then introduce your product. That really shows the stakes of why your software or product solution is important. The other thing is put a use case study in there. You didn't just roll this out. You got feedback. You had people who tried it. What was their experience? Pick the best example. And, hey, this company was losing 12% a year, and they started using our product, and now they forecast that they'll have a 6% profit this year. And then a quote by them saying something wonderful, or maybe even more forward thinking, like, hey, now that we're getting this under control, we can start focusing on other things in the business to leverage more profit. And there's some hope at the end of the tunnel. Other types of releases that you could do are, be a contrarian. There's somebody who came out years ago with news jacking as the thing to do. If everybody's talking about a topic, just join the fray. The problem with that is everybody's talking about it. Everybody's competing with the same press release. Be the considerate, rational madman who is out there claiming everybody else is wrong. And because journalists are fair and balanced, they'll plug you into every article potentially, because if they're being fair and balanced and no one's saying what the downside is, but you're raising your hand or, shaking your fist and saying, hey, not so fast. Electric cars are not good for the environment. They basically are destroying the environment in the mining process, not to mention the labor laws involved and children getting stuff out of mines. But also, have you ever seen a battery fire for one of these electric cars? It takes like tens of thousands of gallons to put out. Not to mention, what happens to these batteries at the end of the life. We are probably a little premature from embracing electric cars so strongly as the solution going forward. No one's going to say that you're crazy. It's a very rational, logical thing. But every time someone talks about the benefits of electric cars, that you stand the chance that they'll plug you in to that article just to be fair and balanced. And so that's another approach.
That was so considerate that most liberals wouldn't tar and feather you for having said that.
Right.
Hey, Mickie, let's be honest. We have to be frank. Most small business owners are not good copywriters. Does eReleases have a service where you can lend those services to the small business owners and write the copy for them?
We do offer professional writing services.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, so we could write that release for you. We do want you to come to us with an idea of what you want, but check out that masterclass and build out a short list of strategic ideas for your business and how your business can apply there. And feel free to reach out to our office if you have questions or answers. We help people with their first PR campaign probably several times a week, and we really believe in it. And we're a great resource. No salespeople, no commissions or quotas. We're really in it, and everybody has the right to say we're not a good fit if we just feel like we won't work for you. And sometimes if you're in the alternative health market or certain other industries, it just isn't really an easy road with PR. And so there you might have to pivot to something outside of PR for things like that. But we're straight shooters, and we'll let you know if we feel like we're not going to be able to help you.
Mickie, how has technology allowed you to have a greater outreach in sending out these releases? I imagine there's a huge difference between sending out faxes in '98 with the way you're doing business today. Can you kind of walk us through that evolution?
Right. So in the US, we basically have a duopoly of newswires. It's PR Newswire and Business Wire. There are other wires you're probably familiar with, like the Associated Press, the AP, UPI, Reuters. Those do not transmit press releases. They transmit articles that they've written, and they license those to newspapers and other people. So, if you're a Baltimore Sun reporter and you're getting ready to leave for the day and you see the Supreme Court just made an announcement, you're like, oh, I'm going to miss dinner. Maybe not. Maybe you can pull a story later from the Associated Press and post it, and you can do that all from your home without having to sit there and research something for hours. And that being said, there are other companies out there with wire in their names that do purport to send your release out to millions and stuff like that. They're mostly scams. I hate to say. There was 1/3 Newswire that was making inroads for a while. It was Internet Wire, and then they pivoted into Globe Newswire through some consolidation. And now they're really not a player with the journalist. They sort of are pivoted themselves to say, hey, if you're a publicly traded company, save money, go through us. And do you really want all these nasty journalists looking too carefully at your financials? Save money, meet SEC disclosure requirements, and not worry about journalists really, tearing you apart. And so it's because of the fact that journalists have not had a good time of it the last couple of decades. There's been a lot of consolidation. They're expected to do more. Used to, a journalist could expect to do 2 or 3 articles a week. Sometimes now they're expected to do 2 or 3 articles a day. And so they do not have the luxury of going to 3 ponds to fish for stories. And their inbox is already an explosion of off-target press releases because of media databases. Media databases have destroyed email for most national journalists. I don't think that the problem's quite there yet for local journalists, but it's getting there. And so you really want to make sure that when you do a press release that you're in one of those 2 ponds, Business Wire or PR Newswire. You don't need to be in both. But you definitely want to avoid anybody that's not those 2 or don't distribute to them like eReleases does.
Right. So I have a question for you. You had mentioned, and I've actually used your service. I think it's great, by the way. I was actually, if you saw me looking around before, I have your book somewhere that you wrote as well, PR Manifesto. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. It's probably up there somewhere. But you mentioned the word campaign, right? As a business owner myself, I don't understand. It's not just one press release and done, or is it a press release over a series of time to actually make like a marketing campaign?
Right. So just like when you advertise on Google, you don't just put one ad and then say 2 weeks later, well, nobody really converted, so let's quit. You have multiple ads running and ad campaigns, and you test and try different approaches. It's the same thing with PR. Until you find something that works and potentially you can replicate, you just test lots of different strategic ideas. Many years ago, I had this company that was almost a link farm, and they basically put like top 10 of a bunch of different verticals. One would be like accounting software. One would be like salespeople's CRM, top 10 architects software, top 10 this, that, and the other, clutch.co. And they started doing a survey where it was focused on that one vertical, and they would send these releases out, and almost every one of them got 8 to 14 articles. And they did that for several years for 20 to 30 verticals a year. So they were doing 20 to 30 press releases a year. This is something that you can do. An industry survey or study is one of the easiest ways to get media pickup. Like I said, they often generate at least half a dozen articles. And these are original articles written by journalists. And they're usually specific to your industry or people who cover your industry. And it is a great way to stand out, because doing that survey as the author, it elevates you as sort of like a thought leader, and people pay attention. And you will get that media pickup. You're going to ask questions that are timely today, things that are going on maybe specific to your industry, but also looking at, where post-pandemic work culture is changing. Some people are working from home, some are doing hybrid. How is that affecting? You can ask questions around that. We have AI, hot button issue. Do you feel like AI is replacing your position, or do you feel like AI is hurting you or helping you? Ask questions around that, and then pick apart questions you would ask if you were at a trade show or a conference, and you take someone aside and say, hey, have you noticed this lately? Like everybody's beginning to slow pay, and net 30 is turning into net 90 with excuses, and you're like, yeah, I have. That's a sign that either the economy of your industry or the national economy is changing. And sometimes you're able to identify it before people in the media that cover your industry have talked about it. And so if you ask questions around these, you could really go very far. Put together, I like SurveyMonkey, 4 questions per page. So you can have 2 pages, 8 questions, 3 pages, 12 questions. I wouldn't go much beyond 16 questions, 4 pages. But on the last page, you can afford to put like a wild question. If they stop halfway or they don't finish that last page, you've still got all the other responses. And SurveyMonkey gives you a link. You're going to then take that link and you're going to approach a small or independent trade association in your industry. And they're out there. There are many of them out there. I was doing a podcast like this with someone in the PR industry, and she cut me off and said, well, Mickie, we're one of the few industries where that wouldn't work because there's only Public Relations Society of America. And I looked at her and said, last time I counted, there's over 430 PR trade associations in the United States. And she was shocked. And it's because they don't get any recognition. People don't know about them, but they do have members. And so I like to approach ones that have at least 400, 500, 600 members or more. And I go and say, hey, I'm doing this survey on our industry. I would love for you to send this link out. I'm looking for at least 100 responses to be statistically relevant. In exchange for that, I'll mention you in a press release I'll be issuing over PR Newswire in the coming weeks. And 2/3 of them will immediately say yes. I've had some that do a little back and forth. So, sometimes we co-brand the survey with them. I don't see a downside to it. It just sort of, legitimizes you a little bit even more. But they are willing to do this because they see it as a win-win where they could potentially get some media attention as well. And they're gonna send that out. You're going to analyze the results, and SurveyMonkey does a pretty good job of showing you what the results are. And you're going to pick the 1 or 2 biggest aha moments. What's going to rattle the cages most in your industry based on the responses? You're going to take all the responses and questions and results and put them on a page on your website, maybe add some other data points there, maybe some quotes throughout that page, and you're going to link to it in the press release. But the press release is really going to focus on 1 or 2 of those questions, why you're going to provide some quotes as to why you felt the numbers skewed a particular way. And you may not always agree with it. You might say, hey, it looks like 2/3 of graphic designers believe that Adobe and AI are going to destroy their business. But I think that's a little alarmist. I think that more likely the people who don't utilize AI and know how to incorporate it into their design business are going to be at a disadvantage in the coming years. But I don't think it's going to destroy the industry. It's logical, rational. You say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, based on that. And so you send that out. Every time we've done that, it's usually at least 6 articles, and sometimes as many as 20. But it always makes a splash. It's just the most important thing is to ask timely questions right now, and then pick the question that you feel the biggest aha moment is. And if you don't trust yourself, ask coworkers, ask other people. If you ever network with people at trade shows or conferences, ask them. And you can also ask them for questions as well, brainstorm questions, because the questions are the most important thing. But it always works, and it is one of the easiest ways to stand out, because the earned media you get is even more elevated because of the fact that you are the author of the survey as well.
Mickie, about 9 to 10 years ago, you did something unorthodox for an entrepreneur who was at the time on top of his game. You fired yourself. How was it watching your business operate from the outside?
It was liberating. I was a micromanager, and I didn't realize it. I felt like I was fine tuning my business by trying to get every conversation from every employee to be said the same way, the same phrases, the same sentences. And what I found is I was driving my staff crazy, and my turnover rate was about 1 year. So every year I was losing, an employee. They never stuck around. And so one of the best things I ever did as a poet was I joined a marketing mastermind group over 15 years ago, and I stayed with them for 10 years off and on. And, I learned about statistical relevance, A/B split testing, and being a creative person, I even applied A/B split testing outside of advertising and marketing. But one of the blind spots I didn't notice about me was the fact that I was a micromanager. And so I had an HR consultant that was in that group. She really works with large firms, but she said, Mickie, I hate to see you constantly waste your hours here talking about this issue when I probably could solve it for you. So she interviewed my customers. She interviewed my staff. She looked at all the job postings I did, and she came back and said, you're not hiring the wrong people, but you are a micromanager and you're driving them crazy. Your fine tuning that you feel is great to them feels like we're never doing anything right, and we're always being challenged, and every day you're picking on us. And so I tried to fix it by not micromanaging. And
You
I
didn't
caught
try to tell her that her analysis was wrong as a micromanager?
that's a great thing about being a poet. I don't have this giant ego. I don't feel like I'm the expert in the room. When an expert tells me something, I listen to it. I just make sure that I'm hiring the best experts, and that they're vetted. But when an expert tells me something, I listen. And I think that's one of the superpowers of me in my business being a poet, is that I'm not sitting there trying to outthink them and justify myself. I just took it for what she said, that's what I was.
Matthew, a small business owner that listens, who is this man?
Right. So that day I caught myself again standing behind a staff member and saying, hey, next time someone asks about that, rather than say no, say this. And then I was just like, Mickie, you are a lost cause. And so I gathered everybody in the office and I said, hey, I'm going home. And they're like, okay, you go home every day. Why are you telling us? I said, I'm not coming back. I'm going to work from home. I will be focusing on marketing. And I'm going to leave you guys to provide the great customer service that you have. Allison, who was a little bit older than everybody else and she had been there the longest, I said, go to her if you have any questions. But if you need to, my email, my phone number, and I will see you guys later. Keep doing a fabulous job, because my customers told Nancy Schlesinger, that was the HR consultant, that you guys are amazing. And I took it for granted, and you are amazing. And so I left, and I focused on the marketing and the strategy and doing things like this. And
what year was that?
That was April of 2015. So, and my business has tripled since then. And I don't think it would have if I was still micromanaging and trying to make every conversation the same. You have to trust people that are going to get the job done. They may not sound word for word like you. They may not follow the exact processes that you do. But unless they're doing it wrong, they're going to get the job done, and you have to trust that you hired the right people. And that's what I did. Today I'm the fun boss. I take the staff to the beach for a week every year, and them and their partners or spouses, and they see me now as the fun boss. And at the time, everybody that was there when I left is still there today, and that's 9 years. So obviously I found the problem, and it was me. So I extracted the cancer, and I found a way in which I can support the staff that is not detrimental to their health and doesn't make them feel like they're doing a terrible job.
Well, Mickie, we don't want the audience to think that press releases are just for profit and loss wielding capitalists. You guys are also press releases with a heart. I read a wonderful story on a asylee from the Soviet Union that sent out a press release. Could you please tell us that story?
Right. So, there's been so many great stories that have come out, and us helping others, out there. I have a nonprofit arm of eReleases called Causewire, where we offer discounted releases for nonprofits. And also, sometimes if you're supporting a good cause and you reach out to us, we'll give you that rate as well. And it's a way in which we can give back to different people. But there's been so many different people and organizations that we've helped over the years. One that comes to mind is, I saved a person's life through press releases. And, if you had ever asked me the possibility of that, I would absolutely think absolutely not. But it was someone who was an agency that worked with us and did releases with us. And then all of a sudden they contacted me and said, Mickie, I have probably the most important press release of my life that I need you to get out. And this person had testified against oligarchs in Russia, in the US, and was given asylum. But every 4 years there's a new, potentially a new sheriff in town in DC, and all of a sudden they said, "Hey, Russia's not our enemy. Why are we giving people asylum from there?" And so they said, "You have to pack your bags and leave." And so they appealed it and spent 6 figures, and eventually they had a seat number that they knew on a plane coming up in about a week and a half that they were going to be on going back to Russia. And he said, I've already gotten text messages from people saying how soon I will be killed after I touch down. And he said, these people don't play. And so we sent that press release out, and the Wall Street Journal picked it up that day. Now, the Wall Street Journal doesn't often do that. They like to have the articles hit the print paper the same day as it does online. But if there's breaking news, of course, they're going to put it online. They considered this breaking news, and they put it online, and it would be in print the following day. And within hours, that person was contacted by their representative in Congress, and it was solved. They literally said that, if this had not happened, their life would be over. And, for me, that's one of the most profoundest things that I've ever participated in, because the stakes were just literally so high. And I don't, discount what this person said as hyperbole, that they would have been killed if they had been sent back to Russia. But, it just goes to, the real power of PR. If you have something that is strategic and important of a message, it can go far. I have a case study on my website. It's the top one that was set up during the pandemic to help restaurants that were closed down. We did it for free to help their cause. And it was a very short-lived effort just to help the restaurants. And basically it worked. It's called the Dining Bond Initiative. They sort of, built it on the War Bond Initiative from the earlier wars. And basically, if you nominated a favorite local restaurant, and the volunteers were able to get in touch with them, you could give money that went directly to that restaurant, and it'd be backed by a dining bond or gift certificate situation. And it resulted in over 100 articles. One press release, just hitting send once, over 100 articles. And, all the big places picked it up, as well as a lot of daily newspapers. It's quite possible it got 150 pickups, because I quit counting the small daily papers after a while, because there's just so many of them that picked it up. And the reason it got picked up is we were sent home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and we didn't have a lot of positive news. And here was something that was very positive. And it was small, and it was something that you sitting at home could act upon. You could give $40 to the place you go every year for your anniversary that's meaningful to you. And if it made you feel like you were making a difference, and you were, over $10 million was raised just by hitting send on the wire. That's the value of the wire. If you have a message that resonates, it can go very far. And much farther than just personal pitching, because I doubt that you yourself could pitch in any short period of time over 100 places and have 100% pickup rate. It's just impossible. So it really is a great strategic thing. And there's lots of these organizations like that, and lots of different efforts like that have done extremely well, with eReleases, with CauseWire specifically. And, it's meaningful to make a difference. And I think that a lot of organizations and nonprofits are looking for a way to get access to the media. It is, that being said, difficult to get picked up. So again, I feel like, focusing on stories is one of the ways to make a difference. I know that not every nonprofit's able to do that, depending on what you do. But if you do have some case studies that you could share, people resonate with that. Everybody that goes on Shark Tank, they're told to do a release before their episode airs, and the producers recommend us because people had good experiences with us. When they go on the show, the first thing they do is tell their story. Why did they create this product or business? And it's often being vulnerable. It's, peeling back, a divorce, or they lost a loved one, or, they lost a job, or anything along those lines. And what it does is it immediately cuts through all the BS and, the corporate logos and the shiny product and stuff like that. It gets you to feel for the person. And, this immediate empathy that's created is probably the most important aspect of PR, because we don't want to do business with logos and brands. We want to do business with people, and people that we care about and feel for. And so the founder story is such an important aspect of PR. And if you can't focus a press release on your story, make sure you include the story elsewhere in the release. As we get to the bottom of a release, there's an about section. We call it a boilerplate. We know it because it usually says about the company. Like if Microsoft was issuing, it'd say about Microsoft. And it'd be like their little elevator pitch of 2 to 6 sentences about the company that succinctly says what they do. It gets recycled and used again and again and updated over time. But that's a place where you could put like 1 or 2 sentences about, why you founded this, or, something like that really breaks through and makes the person care. So a journalist skimming your release will see that. And that's the way the newswire works. It is headline driven. It is by industry. And the journalist will see the headlines of their industry, and they can actually tailor it when they're logged in to exclude certain keywords, like maybe they cover fashion but not ready to wear, and stuff that's at Target and JCPenney and stuff, but more of like high fashion. So they can set up keywords to exclude and include. And that's the real value of it. While their inbox is chaos because of all the spam going on with media databases, the newswire is just clean and free, and there's just 2 ponds to fish in, so it's easy for them to dive in and look. And the great thing about it is, talking about changes in the industry, we are getting our media from other places. And I know Instagram influencers who post video and photos from the wire, because it gives them almost instant access when something is announced or launched before anybody else. I follow somebody on TikTok called Snackalator, and each week he does a roundup of new snacks hitting grocery store shelves, and he often says, I pull these images from the wire. And so I'm not sure if that's a glaze or just the shine on the product, but I'll let you know once I find it in my local grocery store. And so we are really reaching a lot of people and really making a real difference using PR. And it is fractured, and that's okay, because we are learning to adapt, and the newswire remains the best way to reach all of these places.
Mickie, you've built an amazing business. You have an amazing career. I could only think of one wonderful way to end this podcast. Can you recite to us one of your poems?
Oh, sure. Give me just a second to pull that up.
A true Renaissance man. He does it all.
This one, I was named this year to Best New Poets. They pick 50 poets a year and put them in an anthology. And this is the poem that they picked. And it's
You may want to send out a press release about that.
Maybe. It's called Blue Collar.
All right.
When I asked how electricity worked, Dad bent down from the cash register to explain the red and black, the positive and negative, the shiny copper of the ground. Every few months, he sliced open his hand, stripping wire. Maybe when you're older, he said, I'll teach you. When he sent me to the back to restock the drink coolers, I pressed my face against the glass, so cold it stung my lips. Later that day, the scrape of my mop against concrete, the endless rinsing of dirty water. The mop head was older than I was. With every swipe, it shed strips of cloth. I crawled on my knees to pick them up, to save my dad from bending. Shop closed, windows dark. We shared a Coke out front. I watched the mound of his throat rise and fall as he swallowed. The parking lot was gravel, crushed small and packed. His dream, blacktop so smooth we could skate. He walked his fingers across my head, pretending.
Bravo!
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Mickie, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell the audience where they can find you, eReleases?
Yeah, eReleases.com. All my social media is on the lower right, including my personal LinkedIn. But feel free to chat, call, or email the staff. They're very helpful. And again, that free masterclass, great place to start, less than an hour commitment. And that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN.
Mickie, thank you so much. Everybody, it's a wrap on the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.